Welcome to Legal and Wealthy, the podcast for lawyers who are ready to stop playing small and start building true wealth and a career and life of their dreams, powerfully and purposefully. Whether you're a law student, new associate, or seasoned attorney, this show is for those who are ready to take charge of their law career in a new way. I'm your host, Lauren Klein, attorney, law firm owner, professor, and founder of Legal and Wealthy. Here, we don't just practice law, we practice liberation and becoming wealthy attorneys. Because being a great lawyer shouldn't come at the cost of your time, your peace, or your financial freedom. Every week, you'll get the strategy, mindset, and wealth building guidance that law school never gave you. So you can go from just surviving your career to building a legacy through it. Let's get to work. Welcome back to Legal and Wealthy. I am thrilled to be sitting here today with Nathan Ohler, the co-founder and CEO of Nuooly. We're going to have a really great conversation today. For all of you out there who are like, why do I feel like this feels really hard sometimes? Or am I the only one out there? Because Nathan really knows what it takes to turn professional expertise into a thriving law firm. So welcome to the show, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great.
So happy to have you. And I know we had connected originally on a one-to-one call and we had the best conversation. And I was like, wow, I'm almost 3 years into running a boutique law firm. And I was so happy to hear that I was not the only one who has the struggles and the wins, that I've had. So I definitely knew I had to have you on the show with your background in Wall Street and executive leadership. I know you're going to really just provide a ton of value and have a great conversation. So take us back. I want to hear about Nuooly. How did you go from Wall Street to co-founding Nuooly? I'd love to hear the story, the journey.
For sure. And as you know, when we talked, I definitely spent some time in large company environments first, like actually so many people I know who are on the journey with their own law firm where they may be coming from a large environment. But yeah, I spent time mostly at consumer products companies, but I'd always had this entrepreneurial bent. And my co-founder who did this company with me, Nuooly, and it's a community, like you mentioned, for really talented and experienced solo and small firm attorneys. That was his background. He'd been at the world's largest law firm, went off on his own, and had the idea and epiphanies that I know you're living through of like, this is really hard, and why am I reinventing every wheel? And so with my background, I had been focused on the business side and had gone to business school and been this executive, but I had this entrepreneurial bent and really got enamored with future of work, and particularly groups of people who are just extremely, high talent, highly trained. And when they make the brave decision to go off on their own, just like you did, or go to a smaller firm, man, they are on their own. Like they have to figure everything out by themselves. And I just saw kind of and believe strongly in where the labor market was going. And it's like, hey, let's go do something where we're really supporting and enabling them. And not just from things we do, but helping them connect with each other and enable each other along the way. And so Michael and I, my co-founder, had known each other. Our kids grew up together and we'd known each other a long time. And when he had the original idea of, we should create this platform and community, it took me not very long to figure out that was something I wanted to be involved in as well. And so I've graciously, my wife has agreed to let me start a new business, moving from the crazy large corporate world. And it's been amazing. It's just been a real terrific journey, both for ourselves, but also, more importantly, seeing how it really is helping the folks living through what you've lived through and getting them in a place where they can support each other and help each other out. Yeah.
I love it. And when you started Nuooly, did you originally anticipate working with attorneys, CPAs, and executives, or did that kind of organically happen?
So we definitely had attorneys as our initial kind of core focus. And then we realized they were, kind of a couple rings out from that, where people are living through the same things and they could all help each other out in terms of referrals and networking, and they were getting the same kind of questions from their clients. And so think of it as people who are, mostly business focused, whether they're CPAs or fractional executives or attorneys, usually medium-sized, business clients as well. and they're the trusted advisor for those people. So anytime another issue's coming up that maybe that person, it's not the core of what they do, they're often looked to help find and make those connections. And so we pretty quickly realized, like, yeah, attorneys for sure, but there's like, if you're an M&A attorney, you might actually be getting a lot of referrals from fractional CFOs or CPAs who are often on the front line telling their clients, hey, I see you headed towards a transaction here. You need to go get a legal expert involved. So, and vice versa. And there's just been a lot of really nice synergies between that group of folks. And then I would say for us, everyone is really an expert. So think of it as, partner-ish level and above. And while not an official requirement, most of them, like I mentioned, had spent some time in a larger kind of training environment first. So whether that's AmLaw 100 or Big Four accounting or in-house or DA's office, or even if they just got mentored at a smaller company they were at. But when they go off on their own, they feel really ready to do that. Like, hey, I'm an expert in what I do, so I feel like I can, step into running my own business or be at a boutique firm.
Yeah. Yeah. And as someone who was almost at the partner level in BigLaw and then left to start my own law firm, I know there's a lot of things that you just don't know. You don't know until you know. There's a lot of things that are struggles that come up. So I'd love to hear kind of in your community, within the Nuooly community, what are you seeing kind of those main struggles that you see lawyers or other professionals going through when they take the leap of faith from, BigLaw or whatever it might be to their own practice or a boutique practice?
For sure. So the overarching is just something they haven't done before, right? So the whole thing is new. Every now and then someone has had that kind of business training before they choose to do it, but usually not. So just that first epiphany is, hey, I am now a small business owner first who happens to practice law or who happens to be a fractional executive in some way, but I'm a small business owner first, and I just don't know a lot about that. And so then kind of underneath that, it's usually finding other, relevant peers and networks. So pretty quickly, folks realize, hey, I've spent maybe a lot of my career building a really useful network. But when I make this change, my network maybe isn't exactly the right set of people anymore. So maybe I have a lot of connections back at really large firms or back in-house or back at the DA's office or DOJ or whatever. And so it's like, okay, I need to supplement and enhance my network. And that's kind of the one first sub piece. And then the other are all these business aspects, and I often think of it as the way in which, a client interaction goes, where how are you finding clients, to how are you pricing model, how are you servicing them, and then all the back end part of a firm. And so that whole piece of the business aspect is where they see just huge amounts of challenges. All smart people, it's just mostly it's an exposure issue. They just haven't had at bats or time to think about those issues, or they haven't had anyone coach them on it or teach them about it the way they did with their legal career. Like most people didn't shoot out of high school and say, or even college, like, I'm a perfect lawyer already, right? They go to law school and then you work and get all this training. It's no different with running a small firm. The more input you get, the faster you can move up that learning curve.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a huge fan of mentors and coaches and just communities, because in my opinion, it's just a way to fast track your growth. It's a way to avoid a lot of the mistakes, that others have made. Some failure is good and mistakes are good, but some of it you could just skip over that part if you just talk to others.
Our members will often say, like, hey, I feel like I'm hitting every pothole in the road, and if someone would just give me a little guidance, I could. And that's the power of getting these kind of people together, is they can certainly share best practices, and that's one of our main focuses. But sharing what didn't work, I think, is equally powerful, because it allows people to avoid those kind of mistakes and not hit those potholes and spend more time on the best practices or develop their own best practices. And that's such a great way to think about it, is like, hey, I want to know what's good and I want to know what not to do as well, is really powerful.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And, around here, we're all about becoming wealthy lawyers. And I was reading, it was an article or an interview where you were talking about just the missed revenue. If you really aren't focusing on running your law firm like a business and being efficient. So I'd love to talk about that. I think it was like $200,000 of missed revenue, which is staggering. So I'd love to talk about kind of
For
that
sure.
piece of the
Yeah,
conversation. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And the concept there is, and a lot of people have read this because I think it's a statistic that maybe Clio's practice management software that they've put out as a great study they've done. But a lot of people, when they're in a bigger environment where everything gets done for them, they're typically billing pretty close to, on average, about 75% of their time. But when they move off to run their own firm, well, all that stuff isn't getting done, right? They're wearing all the hats. And we talk about it as the like tax of running your own business. And it's moving from that 75% utilization down to usually in the 30 to 50% range. And
Ooh.
it's staggering. So then if you think through, well, hey, if I can start to get some of that efficiency back, here's my hourly rate, pretty soon you see that, hey, that's a lot of money on the table. And then I would say just qualitatively, we have some members and lots of folks who make this change, not just for the revenue side, but they make the change for flexibility, lifestyle, that kind of thing. And it eats into that. So it's like, yeah, not only am I not billing, but I'm spending all this time on my firm and not with my family or not traveling. And so it can be particularly, and then I would say the third part on the qualitative side is like, it's just frustrating, right? I mean, a lot of people who get into particularly the legal profession and have done well are often type A personalities, and they've done well before. And so this might be the first time they're really seeing like, hey, I'm not great. I'm not great at this. And like, why should I be? I haven't had the training. But that alone can be really frustrating, knowing like, hey, there are better ways to do this. I'm reinventing every wheel. But anyways, that can, on the dollar side, that can add back up to, a huge amount of lost value and lost revenue when you're kind of chasing your tail, doing the business stuff in a really inefficient way.
Oh, I feel this in my
Yeah.
soul. I really do.
Well,
So, okay, let's say someone's listening to this podcast and like, okay, that's great. So I need to, improve the utilization of my time or the percentage of time that I'm actually, billing. What are things that they can do to start to hopefully go from that 30,
yeah.
50 range up to 75% or even more? What can they do?
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the challenges is it's kind of, and you live it, it's death by a thousand cuts, right? There isn't just, hey, there's this one thing. And if you fix it, all of a sudden you get all that time back. It's really made up of, right, like for most of our members, it's 20 little things that are all more efficient than they were before. And that's why we use that framework of kind of the client journey just to put some framing around what are these kind of tasks. And so if you think of it as, from how am I, business development and how am I doing that and how efficient am I in that? Do I have something that works? To pricing and pricing model, to the, hey, do I have the right team in place? How am I getting the work done? Am I delegating the right stuff? Am I doing the right stuff myself? And then like we talked about, all that back office around software, technology, AI is a huge, we could have a whole separate podcast just on AI probably, and then how are they billing and collecting and all document management, that piece. And so when we talk about, if that's the framework, how do you start getting better? A little bit, it's learning, like we talked about specifically from these other folks who are living and going through the same journey you are. What are they doing? And again, we always say, like, the secret is there is no secret. Like, people are just working hard and figuring the things out that work for them. But we certainly talk about like being surrounded by the right group of people, because almost invariably our members are getting asked, like we talked about, to make connections for their clients or to bring people in on projects. And so pretty quickly trying to surround yourself with the right group. And in many cases, that's other solo and small firm folks, because in most cases, if your clients wanted to be using a giant firm, they would be, right? They're looking for something different, whether that's cost, attention, expertise. And so they expect that. So finding the right group of people is definitely one of the big things. And then on each of those other buckets, figuring out what works for you and building that into your schedule, iterating and getting better. I mean, one of the things we see certainly within business development is often people just don't have a strategy or approach at all. And so they're kind of all over the place. And that's one of that. We could have also a whole separate discussion just on business development, but like, it's so challenging. There's so many things you could be doing. Probably 80% of the things you could be doing would work. And that almost creates more frustration because you're trying to figure out, well, which of these should I spend my time on? Or if something doesn't work perfectly out of the gate, which pretty much nothing does. It's like you'll try something and it's going to be okay. Do I stick with that and try and get it to be really good? Or do I move to the next thing on my list that I think might also be good? And that's pure art, no science there. But trying to cycle through that, particularly on the biz dev side. And then, yeah, I would say on the back office or getting the work done, members all often hold out delegating and getting support a little longer than they should. We call it the chicken and the egg issue of when should I maybe don't have enough revenue that I feel comfortable bringing in some additional resources, but it's hard to go get more revenue if I'm doing all the work and I'm doing all the non-billable work as well. And so figuring out for you what breaks that chicken and the egg in a way. And that's the power of getting these people together, because they can then hear from each other. Well, how did you get through that chicken and the egg as you were ramping up? You've been independent, 10 years. So how did that work? And you get to hear from people what worked and what didn't work. But those are some of the areas that can get back that efficiency, finding the right people, figuring out kind of your groove, at least for a baseline of biz dev, and then figuring out what work should you be getting some assistance with or getting some leverage on your time. Those are kind of 3 low-hanging fruit things to do sooner rather than later, because it's hard to really ramp up the practice if you're not doing those 3 pieces well.
This episode of Legal and Wealthy is brought to you by Law Firm Sites. Law Firm Sites has been building custom websites and providing online marketing for law firms for over 23 years. They are good at what they do because that's all that they do. If you are looking to expand the reach of your firm or just improve your online presence, Law Firm Sites has the team to do it. Go to lawfirmsites.com or call 1-800-932-8242 and mention Legal and Wealthy to receive 10% off any of their website or marketing packages. Wow. Okay. That was so good. Like, there were so many nuggets of wisdom just in that alone. I think the 2 things that stood out to me the most were, I was talking to one of my clients about this yesterday, my coaching clients. When you're a lawyer, like you said, you're very type A. You're used to being the best. And then maybe in law school, sometimes you're not like the best of the best, like you were in high school or college. But we're used to being very successful. When you become an entrepreneur, failure is part of the equation. You have to fail to succeed, because that's how you learn what works and what doesn't. So I love when you said, you might try something and it may not work. And that doesn't mean that you should immediately pivot. But I think that's that entrepreneurial muscle that you have to be comfortable with something not working the first time.
100%. Yeah. And I probably should have even said one of the things, or the thing that we see with our members that is for sure a best practice or a milestone that is directly correlated to them being really successful is whether they already had the right mindset or they have a mindset shift. But just building on what you said, it's like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur now, and I'm going to have some challenges, and I embrace that. And we talk about having a growth mindset of, hey, I am already really successful. And certainly the people we work with, they're coming from AmLaw 50 firms, and they were, some of them were 20-year partners in that environment before choosing to go off on their own. Just amazing backgrounds. But they got there because, well, I always think I can learn more. And while I'm willing to share and give back, which is wonderful, I'm also open to what peers or other people, other experts have to say. And that mindset applied to their business as well as their legal background, that is probably the number one indicator are they going to be successful running their own firm or being in a smaller environment where they have, real accountability in a way that they didn't have before, potentially. It's that mindset of, yeah, I'm going to hit challenges, but I enjoy learning and that's why we have these peer mastermind groups where that's what they're doing, is talking and sharing that with each other. And you can see the people who, it's interesting, we want people to give back and share. It's the quiet ones who are listening. Those are the ones who are like really internalizing and thinking through like, ooh, what did that person just say? All right, I don't want to hit that pothole, or I want to start trying or testing. In that way, you cycle through those iterations much faster than you would if you're having to do. I mean, most of these people are so smart, they can figure it out on their own. It's just going to take twice or three times as long versus if you can do it with people who are living it through, with you all together.
Yeah. I mean, and not to mention just, sometimes when you're head down and you're building something or you're working on something, you sometimes you have blind spots because that's what happens. So it's so powerful, I think, to be in a group and to have people kind of watch what you're doing and say, hey, did you think about maybe, doing this that way? Or have you considered this revenue stream based on what you're saying? That could make sense, or, whatever it might be. I think there's something incredibly powerful about having that community aspect, because we all are going to miss things. We get very dialed into what we're doing.
Yeah. And you're just, what you know. So we see that all the time. It's so funny as people kind of the cycle they go through or the journey, they'll join our organization and community. They often come with like 2 or 3 like quick things, right? They know they want to get feedback in, like, hey, I'm struggling figuring out my business development or whatever, or I'm trying to hire somebody and I can't figure that out, whatever it is. And they come and they usually ask for input on those, and that's wonderful. And they get a bunch of value from that for sure. But what you're saying, it's like people don't know what they don't know. And once they get in those environments and they're just hearing the offhanded comments from other people, it's just like, oh, I was so focused on hiring an associate, I wasn't thinking about succession planning someday, or I wasn't thinking about, am I trying to build an entity that I can sell and monetize, or is this going to go away when I retire? It's like, I just hadn't thought about that yet, right? Or, hey, I just heard a way that somebody broke this chicken and the egg about how they could really ramp up their growth. And I heard, a set of things that I didn't even know were in the consideration set, and I didn't know to think about those things. So like we had a really great meeting once where someone had talked about how they broke the chicken and the egg was they acquired another small business. And that like blew people's mind. They were like, oh, I know dental practices do that, but I didn't know small law firms do that. And that was the way that had worked for that person. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it was just really awesome to see and they often then come back to us and are like, yeah, I got value from the quick stuff, but like this, I heard something now in my 4th or 5th month that has just changed the way I think about running my firm. And I'll just share one more anecdote. Is a great one will be, so many people believe when they go to hire that they're biting off a full FTE, and they get that it's a big fixed cost. And am I going to be able to up my revenue to afford an associate or a full-time paralegal? And then they'll hear from their peers where people are like, oh, well, I stepped into it by getting someone who can work part-time to help me out. And so I didn't have, they work purely hourly, so I have no fixed costs. I'm only paying them when I have billable time for them, and they're covering their own costs. And that really opens people's eyes to like, oh, there's a different way to do things that I just wasn't considering, which, like you mentioned, it's so powerful that, here are things that I wasn't considering.
Yeah, I think it's powerful for any entrepreneur, but I think especially for lawyers, because we don't typically, like we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, we're not learning in law school how to run a business, how to run a law firm. You might take a course, and that's great. And I hope all law schools, start to offer that. But the reality is that's still only going to be a small piece of your legal education. So there's just so many things. I was a finance major, and I still had, starting out, I'm like, I tried to listen to a lot of podcasts and talk to people and hire coaches and join communities, because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. So
no,
it is so powerful. especially for us.
Yeah, well, and it can, in a side, it's easy, and I'm kind of an analytical thinker, and so it's easy to get too just stuck on the business aspect and like, I could be more efficient, I could have more revenue. There's just such a big qualitative and mental health component of, it's just very frustrating. It feels alone. We see it consistently with our members, even though they're all by any measure amazing. It's they generally will think everybody else has it all figured out and that they're the only ones struggling with these issues. And it's really powerful to get in that setting and hear, even if there isn't a magic best practice or a magic solution. And like I said, that's often the secret is there's no secret. It's just a bunch of people doing really hard work and figuring it out. But just knowing that can really be cathartic and put people in kind of refresh that mindset of like, oh, okay, this is the journey everyone's going through. And this is just part of being, on this journey. And if I can find people to do it with, that's really, really helpful. And to build off what you were saying, so often when people are coming out of these larger environments, the network they've already got is amazing and maybe really supportive. But if most of their network are large firm or in-house attorneys, they don't necessarily have a set of people to go. So they're having to do exactly what you do. I have to go read books or find the podcast, but that takes time. It makes the efficiency problem worse. And so, getting around other people and finding kind of, your group of people who are living that same thing is powerful because it's hard to find them. But once you connect with them, it's like, oh, okay, this is the journey, and I'm not alone, and I have people to get support, and I can learn the skills, and I can talk through on the kind of mental health side what it's like to do this and be accountable for everything. Like that's a unique, stressful position, and so figuring out, well, the rest of this group is in that position too, and how can I share with them, and how can we support each other?
I'm so glad you brought that up, especially the mental health piece, because I think even starting in law school, it's a professional environment. So I think a lot of people kind of keep their emotions, hidden, and they might be struggling, but people just don't know. So everyone thinks, oh, I'm the only one who feels like an imposter, the only one, who feels alone. And then they bring that into their law career. And especially if they're starting a law firm and they're kind of doing something new and scary, I do think that there is immense value in knowing, like you said, that you're not the only one. If there's anyone listening who's like, I feel like everyone else is just so successful and I'm the only one who's, grinding and responding to emails at midnight, or I feel like I can't take a vacation. One, maybe that's time probably to look at, what you're doing, but also you're not the only one who feels that way. People, I think just in the legal profession, we all want to seem perfect and we want to seem like we have it all together, but we're just human beings. We're all just human beings figuring it out.
No, absolutely. And what the kind of typical way when we have a mastermind so mental health will often be the topic of one of the mastermind groups that the group will talk about.
I love that.
And it'll often the way it plays out is someone will be brave and they'll start and say, hey, I'm probably the only one. And even though on paper and I get it objectively, like I'm doing really well, I feel overwhelmed all the time. I feel an enormous amount of stress. I'm waking up at 4 a.m, freaking out 3 days a week. But it's probably just me. Like, what am I not doing right? And before the person's even done telling their story, everyone else on the call will be nodding and being like, oh, I'm going through that as well. I also thought I was the only one. Yeah. And it's just a really again, there's not a magic answer to that, but it's powerful to hear that from each other. And then one of the big learnings, as you were saying, like on the legal side of what people do, they are trained and the work they do is serious to be pretty close to perfection as much, or if not all the time. Yeah. One thing they have to learn is like the business side of what they do actually doesn't have the same like standards. You don't want to be at 50%, but you could be at 80% kind of quality on some of the business stuff you're doing. And that's fine. And so that's a mindset we were talking about before as they become entrepreneurs of being like, I am going to do nearly perfect defect-free work on my legal work, hey, but it's okay if I try a new biz dev thing and it doesn't work out great. Like, what's the harm, right? It's okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect day one. And like you said, it won't be. Like, you're going to make mistakes. And so getting that mindset, and it often comes up in these mental health discussions where people will start to say like, hey, the way I think about my work can be different than the way I think about some of these other business aspects. And I can kind of dial down the pressure on myself to a 5 instead of always having it cranked up to 10 and just feeling like everything I do all the time has to be perfect. Because it's like, no, on this stuff, it's like, so you choose the wrong practice management software. It's like, it's not the end of the world. You'll just switch it after a couple months. It's like, you'll figure it out, but they feel an immense pressure.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's hard to, you have one, like you said, one part of your business, which is the legal work, where we have professional responsibility, we have ethical standards, we have malpractice, considerations, and just doing a good job for your clients at the top of all of that. But things like biz dev, things like putting yourself out on social media or something like that. It's probably gonna suck. There's a trend right now on Instagram that I love. There's like 2 trends. It's like, crazy things that I did or unhinged things that I did in the beginning of my business, which I love because it's usually from someone who's like very successful now. But oftentimes they're sharing things from like 2 or 3 or 5 years ago. You're like, wow, it's amazing what you've accomplished in that period of time, or they'll share like their old social media posts. Or there was a very successful realtor who shared like her 2018 JCPenney photo shoot. That was just like so cringy. Awesome. And I love that because it just shows like, yes, you might be, you might have a shiny social media with 20,000 followers now, but we all start somewhere. We all start with the cringe, and we all start with, especially I was telling a client this the other day too. I went from this big law firm to doing webinars where I was putting flyers up in Starbucks. And that was like a very humbling moment coming from this like, white shoe firm to Starbucks flyers. But I'm like, hey, I'm probably going to get some, some eyes in my webinar. Who cares? Yeah. But that's not all. It took me a lot of mindset work and like a lot of like, okay, I'm going to eat some humble pie. I'm just a human being at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm so glad you talked about that because I think hopefully that will take, for those of you listening, hopefully that will take some of the pressure off of that we put on ourselves, and also will open you up and allow you to take more chances and more risks within your business, or even if you're at a firm within your biz, development within the law firm, even if you're in BigLaw, you're building, a book of business, most likely you're putting yourself out there maybe in different ways, but it's still very applicable.
Yeah, 100%. It's in that, like you said, that mindset of, I'm going to embrace these things. I'm going to realize that I've got to move through them. Like, one of the best bosses I ever worked for would always say, right, like, the movie playing in your head, you're the star, but in everybody else's movie, you're a bit player. And like, starting your own business, there's no better time to live that. And it's like, even people who want to be supportive, clients who end up becoming big clients, they have their own stuff going on, right? And you're a side piece to their life. And the more you can, that's not negative. It's just it's the truth of the situation. Yeah. And so the more that you can accept that and not feel bad about it, but embrace it, it's like, well, I realize I'm not the most important thing to this client, but I still am going to show that I'm interested in what they're doing. I'm going to try and put myself out there and stay in contact. I'm going to try and show that I can contribute to the issues that they're trying to solve. Like, that can become a really core part. And we hear this from our members all the time. I love it when a member sees, hey, this is a email that I got to look at of one client referring me to another client. And they almost never start with, hey, that person is the best practitioner. They might end with that, but they usually start with all these other soft pieces that are so linked back to the mindset of being not just an attorney, but this entrepreneur. And so it's often things around, hey, like, this person's high integrity, right? Like, they do what they say. This person is responsive. They're genuinely interested in my business. You'll often hear, this person, I'm recommending you should meet this person because they're really nice, right? Like they get along with like all of those kind of things. And that comes from this embracing this mindset of like, for the attorney, it's not about you, it's about your clients and how do you fit into their life and how do you fit into their business issues. And like that shift, just like everything else can kind of fall out of that when you have that. And all of a sudden you say, like, well, now I'm not disgruntled. I'm having to put stuff around Starbucks. It's like, I'm embracing it because I have something of value to offer my clients and I'm trying to figure out a way. Hopefully I'll get better over time and it will be more efficient, but I'm trying to figure out a way to interact with them or interact with peers who make referrals in a way that I can then demonstrate and have discussions about here's the value that, not that I can do, but like that they can get out of working with me and how do you figure that out? And like that, just like you've said a couple of times, that all links back to mindset and the approach you have, not just are you the best attorney in your area? There's all these other pieces around it that contribute.
Yeah, so good. So good. So kind of sticking with the mindset piece, but thinking about it more from a financial aspect. I know we kind of talked about, increasing efficiency and increasing the amount that someone's earning. Have you seen some really big kind of financial mindset shifts or big financial win? I'm sure you have within the community. I'd love to hear if you have any anecdotes or stories of just like aha moments or big wins that you've had with your community.
So for sure. Yeah. I'll say they're all, and this is like where I keep saying the secret is there's no secret. So rarely, if any, I'm trying to think where somebody was like, they're running their firm in status quo. And then all of a sudden they woke up one day and it's like, I should do B instead of A. And like things change. It's usually a series of incremental changes of them trying to do something different. But the underlying piece for sure is I'm going to wake up today or I'm next year, whatever the time frame is, and I am going to break the status quo. Like I'm going to do something different going forward than I've been doing because, right, nothing changes if nothing changes. And so if I want my firm to be different or I want the types of clients I work with, like those, how much I'm charging, the type of work I do, what my staff looks like, that all takes some type of change. And that's the big thing is people embrace I'm going to go break the status quo and I'm going to be thoughtful about what I need to do going forwards that's different than what I've been doing. So that might mean taking a bit of a risk and bringing on some staff. We saw, I would say 2024 was the year of people saying, I'm going to stop working with certain types of clients that aren't that isn't my most favorite work. And everyone thinks, I'm just going to slowly step into only having the kind of clients I want, but they're always busy. So in most cases, you actually have to say no to work in hand to free up time and space to get the kind of work you want. And that's brave, right, and courageous to do that. And we've seen members in a really brave way do that, where they just said, I chose to go off on my own so that I would have more control. But I feel like I have less control because I'm doing work for clients to pay the bills and it's not the kind of work I want to do. So I'm going to tell some clients no, or I can't keep moving forwards with them so that I can create. And that's been one of the biggest, both financially, because we get to see it across everyone. So it feels less risky as an observer, but you get to see it play out where it's like, that almost always works out. People do fill up that time. And it's both, in many cases, it's more financially rewarding. And it's more personally rewarding because it's like, well, here's why I chose to go off on my own. I want to work this way with these kind of clients. And that plays out. Yeah, the other one is we see pricing. So a lot of people who go off on their own have never had to set their own price before. And so there's a lot of thinking of what's the right way to do that and how to do it. And so we see members take a brave position of, hey, I don't think I'm charging market anymore. And I think I can step that up and try and walk into that in a responsible way or go back and do some more research around what does the market really look like today. Yeah, we have a very common for people to go off on their own, kind of, just thumb in the breeze, pick a price point and then stick to that for things are going well. And they stick to that for 5, 8, 10 years. And then they'll kind of look back and be like, I'm definitely out of market now, so I need to redo my pricing structure. And then a big trigger point is I go to hire staff and my pricing architecture is out of whack. So I don't have enough room between me and an associate to set my pricing architecture the right way. So that's often a trigger point of, hey, I need to retumble all of my pricing if I want to grow my firm. And so, but anyways, in summary, I would say it's people taking brave decisions and doing something different than they've been doing before. And whether it's financial benefit and the firm grows, or it's just kind of personal satisfaction of, hey, I have more control. It required that impetus of like, I got to wake up on Tuesday and do something different than I was doing on Monday. And do I have the courage to do that? And I would say probably for most of the people who listen to your podcast, certainly of our members, Monday's still pretty good. And so that's actually the big challenge is like, they're not in a crisis, because it's easy to make changes in a crisis. But when things are generally like, oh, things are already going pretty well for me. I'm paying my bills. I am growing my firm, but I want to do something different. Like that's where it's, I think, really, really courageous, because it's like, well, I'm going to poke a hole in a boat that's already working pretty well and then hope that I can patch it up and go faster, or, row faster before, I get it patched up. And I find that as an observer really inspirational, because you get to see when members have taken a brave stance or done something brave, and you see it play out both monetarily as well as kind of professional satisfaction.
So good. This episode is awesome, because even for me, I'm thinking about so many things that, things are going pretty good, but I'm sure there's things that we need to take a brave step back and analyze. So thank you so much, Nathan, for all of this expertise. There were so many just gold nuggets in there of wisdom. So I truly appreciate you. For those who are listening who will want to learn more about you and more about Nuooly and potentially join the Nuooly community, how can they find out more about it? How can they connect with you?
Sure. Yeah, a couple different ways. So we'll get the website information, but just nuooly.com. So Nuooly. I'm on LinkedIn. People can find me there just under Nathan Ohler. And then people are welcome just to email me directly if they want to learn more about what we're doing, or we do networking events, things like that. So people can come to those as well. So all sorts of different ways.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom. Seriously, this was absolutely incredible. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on Legal and Wealthy, and looking forward to just staying in touch with you and watching everything you're doing. It's incredible. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is a great podcast and a great resource for the folks who listen, I know.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Legal and Wealthy. If today's episode sparked something in you, take it one step further. Share it, leave a review, or come connect with me inside the Legal and Wealthy community. Remember, wealth isn't just about the numbers. It's about how you lead, how you live, and how you build beyond the billable. You already have what it takes to create real freedom and wealth. I'm just here to help you claim it.